The screen glowed in the darkness of my bedroom. My hands trembled as I pressed play on the security camera footage. I should have told Thomas the camera was working again. I should have mentioned it at dinner, but I didn't. And what I was about to see would shatter the life I had built over 60 years into pieces so small, I wasn't sure I could ever put them back together. Have you ever discovered something so devastating that you wished you could unhear it, unsee it, unknow it? That's where I was that Tuesday night in October, sitting alone in my bedroom, about to witness the truth I had been too blind to see for months. What happened in the next 10 minutes changed everything. What I did after that, well, there was no going back from that either. My name is Dorothy Cavanaugh. I'm 58 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was a family court attorney with 32 years of experience. I've seen every kind of betrayal, every shade of human greed, every manipulation tactic in the book. I dedicated my career to protecting families, to ensuring justice for those who couldn't fight for themselves. I retired early to help my son Thomas and his wife Jennifer with their new baby. I sold my downtown condo, gave them $300,000 for their dream home, moved into their guest house, and became the grandmother I always wanted to be. I thought I was building a legacy. I thought I was securing my family's future. I thought my son loved me. The camera had been broken for 2 weeks. Just a black screen, no recording, nothing. I had called the technician that morning, a young man who fixed it in 20 minutes. "All set, Mrs. Cavanaugh," he had said, packing his tools. "Recording crystal clear now." I had meant to tell Thomas and Jennifer at lunch, but the baby was fussy, and Jennifer seemed stressed, and I forgot. Just forgot. Such a small oversight. Such catastrophic consequences. That evening, Thomas had been different. Tense. He barely touched his dinner, kept glancing at Jennifer with these coded looks I couldn't decipher. When I offered to watch little Emma so they could have a date night, Jennifer's smile didn't reach her eyes. "That's okay, Dorothy," she said, her voice sugary sweet in that way that had started to make my stomach turn. "We need family time, just the 3 of us." The emphasis on "just" felt like a slap, but I smiled. I always smiled. I went back to my guest house, that converted garage they had so generously allowed me to stay in after I gave them everything. At 9:43 p.m., I opened the security app on my tablet. I wasn't spying. I just wanted to check if the camera was really working. The feed showed their living room in perfect high definition. Thomas and Jennifer sat on the couch I had helped them pick out, the one I had paid for. They were talking, but the audio was muted. I turned up the volume. "Can't keep doing this," Thomas was saying, running his hands through his hair. "She's going to figure it out eventually." My heart started pounding. "Figure what out?" Jennifer laughed. Actually laughed. "Thomas, your mother is clueless. She handed us $300,000 without even asking for a contract. She moved into our garage like some pathetic stray dog we took pity on." The words hit me like physical blows. Stray dog. Pathetic. "She thinks she's helping," Thomas said, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he would defend me. Maybe he would tell Jennifer she was wrong. But you're right. She's outlived her usefulness. We got the money. We got the free childcare. Now she's just in the way. Outlived her usefulness. My son. My only child. The boy I raised alone after his father died. The boy I put through college, through law school, through every challenge life threw at him. He was talking about me like I was a broken appliance they were planning to throw out. "So, we stick to the plan?" Jennifer asked, leaning closer to him. "Next month, we tell her we need our space, that the living arrangement isn't working. We offer to help her find a nice senior apartment, something affordable." "Affordable with what money?" Thomas snorted. "She gave us everything. Her retirement, her savings, her condo equity. That's the beauty of it, Jen. She's trapped. She can't afford to live anywhere else. She'll have to take whatever scraps we offer." They high-fived. My son and his wife high-fived over the fact that they had financially trapped me, manipulated me, used me, and were now planning to discard me. But that wasn't even the worst part. Jennifer's expression shifted, became more serious. "And you're sure about the other thing? The inheritance from your aunt?" My blood turned to ice. My sister Margaret had died 3 months ago. She left everything to Thomas in her will, specifically because she knew I was already settled and wanted to help her only nephew. $750,000. Real estate in Portland. Investment accounts. Thomas had told me he was setting it up in a trust for Emma's college fund. He had shown me papers. He had cried about Aunt Margaret's generosity and promised to honor her memory by securing his daughter's future. Already transferred to the offshore account, Thomas said casually. The one in my name only. She'll never know. And even if she somehow found out, what's she going to do? She's a retired lawyer with no money and no power. We made sure of that. The room started spinning. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just cruelty. This was premeditated theft. This was financial abuse. This was exactly the kind of case I had built my career fighting against, except now I was the victim. I watched as Jennifer kissed my son. Watched as they laughed about how easy it had been to manipulate me. Watched as they planned their upcoming vacation to Hawaii, paid for with my sister's inheritance, while discussing whether they should put me in one of those cheap senior communities where old people go to die. 10 minutes. I watched for 10 more minutes, documenting every word, every admission, every piece of evidence. My lawyer brain kicked in even as my heart was shattering. I screen recorded everything. I took notes. I created a backup file and sent it to my secure cloud storage. And then I made a decision that would change everything, a decision I couldn't take back. I opened my laptop and started typing emails. To my former colleagues, to my financial advisor, who, thank God, I hadn't completely cut ties with, to my sister's estate attorney, to certain people I had helped over my 32-year career, people who owed me favors, people with specific skills. Because here's what Thomas and Jennifer didn't know. I might have given them my money, but I didn't give them my mind. I didn't give them my connections. I didn't give them my 3 decades of experience destroying people who hurt the vulnerable. They thought they had won. They thought I was trapped. They thought I was just a pathetic old woman who would accept whatever crumbs they threw my way. They were about to learn what happens when you underestimate Dorothy Cavanaugh. The war had just begun, and I play to win. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, that casual cruelty, that calculated manipulation. My own son, plotting my destruction like I was nothing more than an obstacle to remove. By 3 a.m., I had watched the footage 17 times. Each viewing revealed new details, new layers of betrayal. The way Jennifer touched Thomas's arm when she said, "pathetic stray dog." The pride in my son's voice when he bragged about the offshore account. The complete absence of guilt, of hesitation, of any shred of human decency. But I wasn't crying anymore. Tears were for the woman I had been 12 hours ago, the naive fool who believed in family loyalty. The woman sitting in that guest house at 3 a.m. was someone different, someone harder, someone who remembered exactly how to dismantle a fraudulent case piece by piece. I opened my laptop and began drafting a document titled Cavanaugh Case Complete Evidence Log. Old habits die hard. For 32 years I had built cases that judges called absolutely airtight. I had a reputation. Dorothy Cavanaugh didn't bring cases to court unless she knew she would win. And I had never, not once, lost a case involving financial elder abuse. This would be no different. Except this time, it was personal. The first email I had sent the night before was to Marcus Chen, my former private investigator. Marcus had worked with me for 20 years, and he was the best in the business. More importantly, he was discreet, thorough, and had access to resources that most people didn't even know existed. I had helped his daughter in a custody battle 5 years ago, saved her from an abusive ex-husband. Marcus had told me then that he owed me a debt he could never repay. It was time to collect. His response came at 3:47 a.m. "Dorothy, I'm in. Whatever you need. Sending my rate sheet, but for you, we'll work something out. What's the target?" I smiled grimly. Target. Perfect word. I typed back, "My son and daughter-in-law. Complete financial history, especially offshore accounts and recent large transfers. Also need deep background on Jennifer Collins before she became Jennifer Cavanaugh. Something tells me this isn't her first rodeo." The reply was almost instant. "On it. I'll have preliminary findings by tomorrow evening. And Dorothy, I'm sorry. No parent should go through this. Sorry." People would be sorry, I was sure. They would offer sympathy, pity, those sad head shakes that meant, "Poor Dorothy, how tragic." But I didn't want sympathy. I wanted justice. I wanted restoration. I wanted them to understand that you don't destroy Dorothy Cavanaugh and walk away unscathed. The second email had gone to Robert Thorne, the estate attorney handling my sister Margaret's will. Robert was old school, meticulous, and he had known Margaret for 40 years. They had been close friends. If anyone would be outraged by Thomas's theft of her legacy, it would be Robert. I crafted that email carefully. "Robert, I need to speak with you urgently regarding Margaret's estate distribution to Thomas. I have evidence that suggests the funds may not be allocated as she intended. Can we meet this week? This is time-sensitive and deeply concerning." By 4 a.m., I had created a comprehensive timeline. Every significant event of the past 6 months, cross-referenced with bank statements, text messages, and now the security footage. The pattern was impossible to ignore once you knew what to look for. April. I announced my early retirement. Thomas and Jennifer suddenly started talking about buying a bigger house for the baby. May. They found their dream home, but were $200,000 short. I offered to help. They acted surprised, grateful, reluctant to accept. They had played their parts perfectly. June. I sold my condo. Jennifer suggested I could stay with them, just temporarily, in the guest house they were planning to convert. So generous, so thoughtful, so calculated. July. I gave them $300,000, the exact amount they needed. What a coincidence. August. Margaret died. Thomas was named sole beneficiary. He cried in my arms, told me how much he had loved his aunt, promised to honor her memory. I comforted him. I believed him. September. Thomas claimed he was setting up a trust for Emma, showed me official-looking papers. I noticed now, reviewing my photos of those documents, that they were cleverly worded to seem legitimate while actually saying nothing binding. He had known I would review them. He had prepared for that. October. They started pulling away. Fewer family dinners. Jennifer's comments becoming more barbed. Thomas more distant. They had what they wanted. Now they were planning the disposal phase. Every step had been planned. Every moment had been a performance. How long had they been plotting this? Since before Emma was born? Since before they got married? How much of my relationship with my son had been real? And how much had been a long con? The guest house suddenly felt suffocating. I needed air. I needed to move. I put on my running shoes, something I hadn't done since retiring. But my body remembered. At 58, I was still strong, still capable. I had run a marathon at 55. I had argued cases that lasted weeks without showing fatigue. I was not some feeble old woman they could simply discard. The pre-dawn streets were empty. My footsteps echoed in the silence. With each stride, my mind cleared. The emotional fog lifted, replaced by the crystal-sharp focus I had honed in countless courtrooms. This was a case. Nothing more, nothing less. Emotional attachment was a liability. I needed to think like an attorney, not like a mother. By the time I returned to the guest house, sweaty and energized, I had the beginnings of a strategy. Multiple strategies, actually. Because the beautiful thing about having 32 years of legal experience is that you learn there's always more than one way to win. Strategy 1. Legal action. If I could prove the offshore transfer violated the terms of Margaret's will or constituted theft, I could force the return of those funds. Robert Thorne would be crucial here. Strategy 2. Financial pressure. If Marcus could trace their other assets and liabilities, I might find leverage points. Did they have debts I didn't know about? Other schemes in progress? People like Thomas and Jennifer were rarely satisfied with one score. Strategy 3. Social exposure. My son was a corporate attorney at a prestigious firm. Jennifer worked in pharmaceutical sales. Both industries valued reputation above almost everything else. What would happen if their colleagues, their clients, their friends knew what they had done? Strategy 4. The long game. Sometimes the best revenge isn't immediate. Sometimes you set things in motion that take months or years to fully materialize. But when they do, the impact is devastating. I showered, changed into clothes that made me look professional, competent, powerful. Not the soft grandmother cardigans I had been wearing lately. No, Today called for the charcoal suit I wore when I had particularly important court appearances, the armor of the professional woman who took no prisoners. At 7 a.m., my phone rang. "Marcus, you're going to want to sit down for this," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "I did a preliminary search on Jennifer Collins. Dorothy, her real name is Jennifer Hartley. She changed it legally 8 years ago." My stomach dropped. Why would she change her name? Because Jennifer Hartley was involved in a case in Nevada. Elder fraud. She was working as a caregiver for a wealthy widow, gained her trust, convinced her to change her will. The woman's children sued. There was a settlement, sealed records, but I have contacts. Jennifer walked away with $200,000 and the agreement that she would never work as a caregiver again. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. She's done this before. Not just once. I found 2 other incidents. Different states, different identities, similar patterns. She finds wealthy older people, gains their trust, extracts their money, and disappears. But this time, she upgraded her method. Instead of being the caregiver, she married into the family, got a permanent position, and she found the perfect accomplice in your son. I felt sick. Thomas wasn't just cruel. He was complicit. He had knowingly married a con artist and helped her target his own mother. This wasn't a son who had been corrupted by a bad influence. This was a predator who had found a partner. "There's more," Marcus continued. "That offshore account? It's in the Cayman Islands. But here's the interesting part. There are 2 signatures on the account, Thomas and Jennifer, and it was opened 3 months before Margaret died. They had planned it. Before my sister was even gone, they were setting up the infrastructure to steal her legacy. The grief Thomas had shown, the tears, the promises to honor her memory, all of it had been theater. He had been planning to rob his dying aunt, even as he held her hand in the hospital. "Marcus, I need everything, every detail, every crime, every lie. Build me a case so comprehensive that they won't have anywhere to hide. Already on it. I'll have a full report by tomorrow." "But Dorothy, there's something else you should know. I checked your financial records, the ones you gave me access to. That $300,000 you gave them? They didn't just use it for the house down payment." My hands clenched. "What did they do?" "They used $100,000 for the house. The other $200,000 went into cryptocurrency accounts and offshore transfers. They've been hiding your money from you. From what I can tell, they were planning to claim they used it all on the house, but actually, they were building themselves a nest egg. Your nest egg." The rage that swept through me was cold, calculated, and absolutely focused. They hadn't just stolen from me. They had stolen from me and then lied about what they had done with it. Every level of this was fraud. Every layer was betrayal. "Get me documentation of everything," I said, my voice steady despite the fury coursing through my veins. "Bank transfers, account statements, communications. I want a paper trail so clear that a first-year law student could prosecute this case. You'll have it. And Dorothy, make them pay. Make them understand what happens when you mess with the wrong person." I hung up and sat in silence for a long moment. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in 5 years, Detective Sarah Morrison. Sarah had worked financial crimes for 20 years before retiring. We had collaborated on dozens of cases. She knew every trick, every loophole, every way that criminals tried to hide money and escape justice. More importantly, she was still consulting for the district attorney's office. If this needed to become a criminal matter, Sarah would know exactly how to make that happen. But first, I needed to maintain my cover. Thomas and Jennifer couldn't know that I knew. Not yet. The longer they thought I was oblivious, the more evidence they would create, the more mistakes they would make. So when Thomas texted me at 8 a.m. asking if I could watch Emma for a few hours, I responded exactly as the old Dorothy would have. "Of course, sweetheart. Bring her over whenever you're ready. I'm always here for you. Always here for you." The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary. Because in war, and make no mistake this was war, the element of surprise was everything. Thomas brought Emma over at 9. He looked tired, stressed. Good. He should be stressed. He had stolen nearly $1 million and was trying to manage the logistics of hiding it while maintaining his innocent facade. That kind of deception took effort. "Thanks, Mom," he said, handing me my granddaughter. "You're a lifesaver. Lifesaver. The irony was almost funny. I was about to destroy his life, and he had no idea. "Anything for my family," I said, smiling warmly. "You know that." He left quickly, barely making eye contact. Guilt? Or just impatience to get back to his criminal enterprise? I held Emma, my beautiful granddaughter, and felt a pang of genuine sorrow. She was innocent in all of this. She would be caught in the crossfire of what was coming. But children are resilient, and better she learn early that actions have consequences, that theft and betrayal and cruelty don't go unpunished. My phone buzzed. An email from Robert Thorne. "Dorothy, I can meet you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Your email concerned me greatly." Margaret was very specific about her wishes for that inheritance. If something is amiss, we need to address it immediately. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., the first domino would fall. Robert would learn about the offshore account. He would be obligated to investigate. The estate could file claims. The legal machinery would begin to turn. But that was just the beginning. I had 10 different moves planned, each one designed to tighten the noose around Thomas and Jennifer's necks. Some would be quick. Others would take months to fully materialize. By the time I was done, they would understand the full cost of their betrayal. I looked down at Emma, sleeping peacefully in my arms. "Your daddy made a terrible mistake," I whispered. "He forgot that your grandmother is Dorothy Cavanaugh, and Dorothy Cavanaugh doesn't lose." The game was on, and I held all the cards. They just didn't know it yet. Robert Thorne's office hadn't changed in the 5 years since I'd last been there. Same mahogany desk, same wall of leather-bound law books, same faint smell of old paper and expensive coffee. But I had changed. The woman who walked through that door at 2 p.m. was not the grieving sister who had sat in this same chair when Margaret's will was read. That woman had trusted, had believed, had been soft. The woman sitting here now was made of steel. "Dorothy," Robert said, standing to greet me. His expression was grave, concerned. He was 72, silver-haired, with the kind of dignified presence that came from 50 years of practicing law. "I've been worried since I got your email. Tell me what's going on." I opened my briefcase and pulled out the folder I had prepared. Inside were printouts of the security footage transcripts, Marcus's preliminary financial investigation, and a timeline of events. I slid it across the desk to him. "Margaret's inheritance to Thomas," I said, my voice calm and professional. "All $750,000 of it. He told me he was putting it in a trust for Emma's education. That was a lie. He transferred it to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, an account he and his wife opened 3 months before Margaret died." Robert's face went pale. He opened the folder and began reading. I watched as the color drained further with each page he turned. His hands trembled slightly when he reached the transcript of Thomas and Jennifer's conversation. "Dear God," he whispered, "Margaret would be devastated." "Margaret was very clear about her intentions," I continued. "She left that money to Thomas because she believed it would secure his family's future, particularly Emma's education. She specifically mentioned in our conversations before she died that she wanted her legacy to help her great-niece have opportunities. This is not just theft from the estate. This is a betrayal of Margaret's explicit wishes." Robert looked up at me, his eyes sharp behind his glasses. "You've documented all of this?" "Every detail. I have video evidence of Thomas admitting to the offshore transfer. I have a private investigator tracking the money trail, and I have more information that you need to know about Jennifer." I told him about Marcus's discoveries, about Jennifer's real identity, her history of elder fraud, the pattern of targeting wealthy older people. Robert's expression grew darker with each revelation. "This changes everything," he said finally. "As executor of Margaret's estate, I have a fiduciary duty to ensure the inheritance is used according to her wishes. If Thomas has misappropriated these funds, the estate has grounds to file suit for recovery. Beyond that, this could be criminal fraud." "I know," I said. "That's why I came to you first. I want this done right. I want every legal avenue pursued. And Robert, I want them to face consequences that go beyond just returning the money." He studied me for a long moment. "Dorothy, I've known you for 30 years. I've never seen you like this." "You've never seen me betrayed by my own son." He nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "File a claim against Thomas on behalf of the estate. Demand full accounting of Margaret's inheritance. Request immediate freeze of the offshore accounts. Make it official. make it legal, and make it impossible for him to hide. Robert picked up his phone. I'll start the paperwork today. We'll have injunctions filed by Friday. Dorothy, this is going to get ugly. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for whatever it takes. After I left Robert's office, I drove to meet Sarah Morrison at a small cafe downtown. She was waiting at a corner table, looking exactly as I remembered. Short gray hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. The bearing of someone who had spent decades catching criminals. Dorothy Cavanaugh, she said as I approached. When you called yesterday, I have to admit, I was surprised. Retired life not treating you well? I sat down and handed her a copy of the same folder I'd given Robert. Retired life was fine, until I discovered my son and daughter-in-law have been running a sophisticated fraud scheme, with me as the primary victim. Sarah's expression shifted immediately from casual to professional. She opened the folder and began reading. I watched as her investigator's mind processed the information, connecting dots, seeing patterns. This Jennifer, she said after a few minutes. The name changes, the history of elder fraud, the methodical approach. I've seen this before. There's a type of criminal who specializes in exactly this kind of long con. They're patient, they're careful, and they're very good at what they do. Can we prosecute? Potentially. The offshore account? The misrepresentation of fund usage? The conspiracy to defraud? There's a criminal case here. But Dorothy, you need to understand what you're asking. Prosecuting your own son means he could face serious prison time. I met her gaze steadily. I'm not asking to prosecute my son. I'm asking to prosecute a criminal who happens to share my DNA. There's a difference. Sarah nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. Fair enough. I'll need to bring this to the DA. They'll want to interview you, review all the evidence. This isn't going to be quick. I don't need quick. I need thorough. I need airtight. I need them to understand that what they did has consequences that will follow them for the rest of their lives. I'll set up a meeting with the Financial Crimes Unit. They're going to love this case. It's got everything. Family drama, offshore accounts, a con artist with a history. It's the kind of case that makes careers. I left the cafe feeling the pieces falling into place. Robert would attack from the civil side, freezing assets and demanding accountability. Sarah would build the criminal case involving law enforcement and the district attorney. But I wasn't done assembling my team. My next call was to Linda Park, a colleague from my years practicing family law. Linda had transitioned into elder law 5 years ago and had become one of the most respected advocates in the field. If anyone understood the nuances of financial elder abuse, it was Linda. Dorothy, she sounded genuinely happy to hear from me. How's retirement? Complicated. Linda, I need your expertise. Do you have time to meet this week? Her tone shifted, picking up on something in my voice. For you? Always. What's going on? We met the next morning at her office. Linda was 55, energetic, with the kind of passionate intensity that made her a fierce advocate for her clients. I had always respected her commitment to protecting vulnerable older adults from exploitation. When I finished explaining the situation, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned forward, her expression fierce. Dorothy, what Thomas and Jennifer did isn't just morally reprehensible. It's textbook financial elder abuse. The fact that you're an attorney yourself, that you should have seen it coming, doesn't make it less valid. It makes it more insidious. They specifically exploited your trust, your family bond, your desire to help. That's predatory behavior. Can we use that legally? Absolutely. California has strong elder abuse statutes. You're 58, which qualifies. They engaged in financial abuse by taking your assets under false pretenses. There's a case here for enhanced damages, potentially treble damages. We're not just talking about getting your money back. We're talking about punitive measures designed to punish this kind of exploitation. This was exactly what I needed to hear. How do we proceed? I'll file a separate civil suit under the Elder Abuse and Dependent Adult Civil Protection Act. It runs parallel to whatever Robert does with the estate. Between the two cases, we can freeze their assets, demand full financial discovery, and make their lives a legal nightmare. And Dorothy, there's something else. If we can prove a pattern of this behavior, if we can connect Jennifer's past crimes to this current situation, we might be able to pursue RICO charges. RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Designed to combat organized crime, it had been increasingly used in cases of systematic fraud. If we could prove Jennifer and Thomas were operating an ongoing criminal enterprise, the penalties would be severe. I have a private investigator building exactly that case, I said. He's documenting Jennifer's entire history. Linda smiled grimly. Then let's destroy them. Legally, thoroughly, and completely. That evening, Marcus called with his full report. I sat in my guest house, my laptop open, taking notes as he detailed 3 decades of Jennifer's criminal activity. She started small, Marcus explained. Shoplifting in her teens, check fraud in her early 20s. Then she discovered that exploiting elderly people was more profitable and harder to prosecute. The first case I can confirm was when she was 28. She befriended an 82-year-old man in Arizona, convinced him she was in love with him, got him to change his will. His children sued after he died. Settlement was sealed, but she walked away with money. How much? Around $75,000. Not huge, but it established the pattern. Next was the Nevada case I mentioned. Then one in Oregon, one in Washington. Each time she got better at it, more sophisticated, harder to trace. The name changes helped. She'd build a new identity, find a new target, extract what she could, and disappear before anyone could build a case. Until Thomas. And here's where it gets interesting. I found communications between them dating back 6 years. They met on a forum, Dorothy. A forum where people discuss financial fraud strategies. They were planning this before they even got married. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. 6 years. Everything had been orchestrated. The courtship, the wedding, the pregnancy, Emma's birth. All of it calculated to position Jennifer perfectly to exploit our family's wealth. Thomas was the inside man, I said, the pieces clicking together. He provided the family access, the trust, the financial information. Jennifer provided the expertise in manipulation and extraction. Exactly. And they were good at it. They studied you, Dorothy. I found notes, actual written notes, analyzing your psychology, your vulnerabilities, your assets. They knew exactly how to play you. The clinical nature of it was somehow worse than the betrayal itself. This wasn't crime of passion or opportunity. This was methodical, researched, planned exploitation. Send me everything, I said. Every document, every communication, every piece of evidence. I want a case so overwhelming that they can't even think about fighting it. Already compiled. But Dorothy, there's one more thing. I found another account. A third offshore account that even Robert and Sarah don't know about yet. This one has almost $2 million in it. My breath caught. $2 million? Where did that come from? I'm still tracing it, but preliminary analysis suggests they've been running this scam on multiple targets simultaneously. You weren't the only victim, Dorothy. You were just the biggest score. There are at least 4 other families they've defrauded in the past 3 years. Smaller amounts, different methods, but the same pattern. This changed everything. This wasn't just about my money or Margaret's inheritance. This was about stopping a criminal enterprise that had destroyed multiple families. This was bigger than revenge. This was about justice for everyone they had hurt. Marcus, I need you to find the other victims. Document everything. We're going to need them. Way ahead of you. I've already identified 3 families willing to talk. They're scared, embarrassed, but they're angry. When they found out they weren't alone, that there were other victims, they started wanting justice. A plan formed in my mind, bigger and more comprehensive than anything I had initially envisioned. This wouldn't just be a legal case. This would be a coordinated strike from multiple directions, overwhelming Thomas and Jennifer with evidence of their systematic criminality. Here's what we're going to do, I said, my voice steady and cold. Robert files the estate claim. Linda files the elder abuse suit. Sarah coordinates with the DA on criminal charges. You document the pattern of fraud across multiple victims. And I coordinate everything, making sure each piece of evidence supports every other piece. We create a web so tight that they can't move without getting more tangled. You're building a perfect case. I'm building an inescapable cage. By the time we're done, they won't just lose the money. They'll lose everything. Their freedom, their reputation, their future. I want them to understand what it feels like to have everything stripped away. After I hung up with Marcus, I sat in the darkness of the guest house. Tomorrow, Thomas and Jennifer would wake up thinking they had won, thinking they had successfully manipulated and exploited me, thinking they were safe. They had no idea that the walls were already closing in, that every ally I had contacted was already building the case against them, that the machine of justice I had spent 32 years learning to operate was now turning its full attention to their destruction. I thought about Margaret, about how she had loved Thomas, how proud she had been of him, how she had wanted her legacy to benefit her family. They had stolen that from her. They had used her love as a weapon. Well, now they would learn what happened when you weaponize love against Dorothy Cavanaugh, because I had weapons too. Legal weapons, professional weapons, the weapons of 3 decades fighting for justice. And I was just getting started. If you're listening to this and you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, someone you loved, I want you to know something. You're not powerless, you're not helpless, and you're not alone. Justice takes time, it takes strategy, it takes strength, but it comes. It always comes. Thomas and Jennifer thought they had destroyed me. They thought they had won. They were about to learn the difference between winning a battle and winning a war. And in this war, I held every advantage they didn't even know existed. The meeting with the other victims happened in Linda's conference room on a gray Thursday afternoon. 5 families, all destroyed by Thomas and Jennifer's schemes in different ways. As they shared their stories, I felt my resolve harden into something unbreakable. They convinced my father to invest his retirement in a fake company, said Patricia Chen, a woman about my age with tired eyes. $200,000 gone. He died thinking he had just made a bad investment. We only found out the truth when going through his papers. Michael Torres was next. Jennifer worked as my mother's caregiver for 6 months. By the time we realized what was happening, she had drained $80,000 from Mom's accounts. Small withdrawals, always just under the reporting threshold. When we confronted her, she disappeared. We couldn't even press charges because we couldn't find her. Each story was a variation on the same theme. Trust exploited, vulnerability weaponized, families destroyed, while Thomas and Jennifer walked away unscathed. Until now. Here's what's going to happen, I said, standing at the head of the table. In exactly 1 week, on Monday morning, we strike simultaneously. Robert files the estate claim. Linda files the elder abuse lawsuit. Sarah presents the criminal case to the district attorney. And all of you file your own claims with evidence that Marcus has compiled. 5 separate legal actions, all hitting them at once. Will it work? Patricia asked. It will overwhelm them. Their lawyers won't know which fire to fight first, and while they're scrambling to respond to the legal assault, we'll be freezing their assets, locking down their accounts, making sure they can't hide another dollar. Marcus projected a flowchart on the screen showing the $2 million in the 3rd offshore account, traced back to each of these families and others. The evidence was damning, comprehensive, irrefutable. They kept records of everything, Marcus explained. Every transaction, every target, every scam. They thought they were being careful, documenting their success. Instead, they built our case for us. By the time the meeting ended, we had a coordinated strategy. Each family knew their role. Each lawyer had their marching orders. The machine was ready to move. That night, I had dinner with Thomas and Jennifer. They had insisted, probably feeling guilty about their growing distance. I played my part perfectly. The doting mother and grandmother, chatting about Emma's latest milestones, asking about their work, showing no sign that I knew anything. Jennifer was particularly warm, which told me they were getting ready for the next phase of their plan. The phase where they would gently push me out, offering to help me find affordable housing, acting like concerned family members instead of the predators they were. Dorothy, we've been thinking, Jennifer said, her voice dripping with false concern. The guest house is so small, you deserve better. Maybe we could help you look at some nice senior communities, places where you could have your own space, meet people your age. There it was, the beginning of the disposal phase. That's so thoughtful, I said, smiling warmly. But I'm very comfortable here, close to Emma, close to you both. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. I watched Jennifer's smile tighten almost imperceptibly. Thomas shifted in his seat. They hadn't expected resistance. They thought I would jump at any option they presented, desperate and grateful. Of course, Thomas said quickly. No rush, just something to think about. Absolutely, I agreed. I'll definitely think about it. I would think about it, all right. I would think about how in 5 days their entire world would collapse, how every asset would be frozen, how every lie would be exposed, how every victim would have their day in justice. As I walked back to the guest house that night, I looked up at their bedroom window. The light was on. They were probably congratulating themselves on how well the conversation had gone, planning their next move, counting their stolen millions. Let them plan. Let them scheme. Let them think they were in control, because on Monday morning, everything would change, and there would be no going back for any of us. Friday morning arrived with unseasonable rain, the kind of heavy downpour that felt like the world itself was holding its breath. I sat in the guest house surrounded by boxes of documents, my laptop open to multiple tabs of legal filings, phone on speaker as I coordinated the final details with my team. All victims are ready, Marcus confirmed. Their attorneys have the evidence packets. Everyone files Monday at 9 a.m. sharp, coordinated down to the minute. Robert, I asked. Robert Thorne's voice came through clear and determined. Estate claim is complete. I've included demands for full financial disclosure, immediate asset freeze, and emergency injunction preventing any transfers. The judge who's reviewing it is Judge Patricia Morrison. She's particularly harsh on estate fraud cases. Judge Morrison, I knew her, had worked with her on several cases over the years. She had lost her own mother to financial exploitation by a caregiver. This case would resonate with her personally. Linda, status on the elder abuse filing? Ready to go, Linda confirmed. I've documented the pattern of exploitation, the false pretenses, the intentional isolation tactics. Under California law, we're seeking treble damages. That's $900,000 just from what they took from you, not counting Margaret's inheritance. And Sarah? Detective Sarah Morrison's voice held barely contained excitement. The DA is all in. Financial Crimes Unit has reviewed everything. We're filing criminal charges Monday afternoon, right after the civil suits hit. Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, identity theft for Jennifer's multiple identities, and we're exploring RICO charges based on the pattern across multiple victims. RICO charges. Under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, if convicted, they could face up to 20 years in prison and massive fines. Everything they had stolen, everything they had built on lies, would be forfeit. What about the offshore accounts? I asked. Already coordinated with federal authorities, Sarah replied. The moment the charges are filed, they'll freeze the Cayman accounts. Thomas and Jennifer won't be able to access a penny. We've also flagged their passports. They're not leaving the country. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting it all sink in. 72 hours from now, their entire criminal empire would collapse. Every escape route would be blocked. Every asset would be frozen. Every lie would be exposed. There's one more thing, Marcus said, his tone shifting to something more personal. Dorothy, I need to ask, are you absolutely certain you want to go this far? Once Monday happens, there's no going back. Thomas is your son, Emma is your granddaughter. This will tear your family apart. The room fell silent. Everyone waiting for my answer. I thought about that night I watched the security footage, about Thomas's voice saying I had outlived my usefulness, about Jennifer laughing and calling me a pathetic stray dog, about Margaret's inheritance stolen before her body was cold, about Patricia Chen's father dying thinking he had failed, about Michael Torres's mother, confused and betrayed by someone she trusted. My family was torn apart the moment Thomas chose to become a criminal, I said quietly. The moment he conspired with a con artist to destroy his own mother. What I'm doing isn't revenge. It's justice. It's protection for the next victim they would have targeted. It's consequences for choices they made freely and repeatedly. Just wanted to make sure, Marcus said gently, because come Monday, the whole world is going to know what they did and what you did in response. Good, I said firmly. Let them know. Let everyone know that Dorothy Cavanaugh doesn't allow herself to be destroyed without fighting back. Let it be a warning to every other predator who thinks they can exploit the people who love them. After the call ended, I spent the afternoon doing something I hadn't done in months. I went through old photo albums, pictures of Thomas as a baby, as a child, graduating from high school, from college, from law school. His wedding day, looking so happy with Jennifer. The day Emma was born. Him holding his daughter with tears in his eyes. Had any of it been real? Or had I been watching a performance for 58 years, seeing only what he wanted me to see? It didn't matter anymore. The Thomas in those photographs, if he had ever existed, was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone who could look his mother in the eye and lie without hesitation, someone who could steal from his dying aunt, someone who could conspire to leave his own mother destitute. That person deserved everything that was coming to him. Saturday, I took Emma to the park. Thomas and Jennifer had plans, they said, probably moving more money, preparing for their final push to get rid of me. I didn't care. I wanted one last day with my granddaughter before everything exploded. Emma laughed on the swings, chased pigeons, ate ice cream that got all over her face. She was innocent, pure, untouched by her parents' corruption. Whatever happened next, I would make sure she was protected. I had already contacted a family law attorney about grandparents' rights. If Thomas went to prison, if Jennifer's criminal history came fully to light, I would fight for custody. Emma deserved better than to be raised by criminals. I love you, little one, I whispered as she fell asleep in my arms on the park bench. Whatever happens, I love you. And I'm going to make sure you grow up knowing the difference between right and wrong, something your parents forgot. Sunday evening, I did something that surprised even myself. I went to church. I'm not particularly religious, hadn't been to services in years, but something drew me there, to sit in the quiet darkness and think about what I was about to do. Was it right? Was it just? Or was I simply becoming what they were, using my power and knowledge to destroy them the way they had tried to destroy me? No, the difference was clear. They had attacked an innocent person who loved them. I was defending myself and protecting future victims. They had acted from greed. I was acting from justice. They had hidden in shadows and lies. I was bringing everything into the light. Tomorrow, the truth would be revealed. Tomorrow, consequences would arrive. Tomorrow, Thomas and Jennifer would learn that some people, when pushed to the edge, don't fall over. They push back. And when Dorothy Cavanaugh pushes back, the whole world moves. I drove home as the sun set, the sky turning blood red on the horizon. Poetic, I thought. A red sky for the end of one life and the beginning of another. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Thanks for watching Emma today, Mom. You're the best. We're lucky to have you. The best. Lucky to have me. Tomorrow they would find out just how unlucky they truly were. I typed back, always happy to help. Family is everything to me. Family is everything. It was true. That's why their betrayal cut so deep. That's why my response would be so devastating. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. Monday morning would begin early. I wanted to be dressed, prepared, ready when the first filing hit the courthouse. I wanted to see their faces when they realized what was happening. When they understood that the pathetic old woman they had dismissed so easily had just destroyed their entire world. One more night of them thinking they had won. One more night of peace before the storm. I had built my career on moments like this. The calm before the verdict, the silence before the judge's ruling, the pause before justice arrived. And justice, I had learned over 32 years, always arrived. It just took patience, preparation, and the absolute certainty that you were right. I had all three. Monday couldn't come fast enough. Monday morning, 6 a.m. I stood in front of the mirror in my charcoal suit, the one I wore for my most important cases. Hair pulled back, minimal makeup, professional, powerful, unbreakable. The woman looking back at me wasn't the soft grandmother who had moved into this guest house 6 months ago. She was Dorothy Cavanaugh, attorney at law, warrior for justice, destroyer of those who preyed on the vulnerable. Today, that destruction would be methodical, legal, and absolutely devastating. At 8:45 a.m., I received the first confirmation text from Robert. Filing in 15 minutes. Judge Morrison is reviewing personally. She's already flagged it as priority. At 8:50 a.m., Linda texted, Elder abuse claim ready. Coordinating with courthouse. Your interview with authorities is scheduled for this afternoon. At 8:55 a.m., Marcus sent a group message to all victim families. 5 minutes. Everyone ready. Remember, simultaneous filing creates maximum impact. They can't fight 5 fronts at once. I poured myself coffee with steady hands. No trembling, no doubt, just cold, calculated certainty. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone exploded with notifications. Robert, filed. Emergency hearing set for Wednesday. Asset freeze requested and granted pending hearing. Their accounts are locked as of this moment. Linda, filed. Process server is heading to Thomas's office now. He'll be served at work, in front of his colleagues. Marcus, all 5 victim families have filed. Courthouse is processing 6 separate claims against Thomas and Jennifer Cavanaugh. The clerk said she's never seen anything like it. Sarah, criminal charges filed. Warrants being prepared. We'll execute arrests this afternoon. I sat down slowly, letting it sink in. It was done. The machine was in motion. Nothing could stop it now. At 9:17 a.m., my phone rang. Thomas. His voice was panicked, confused, angry. Mom, something crazy is happening. I just got served with some kind of lawsuit about Aunt Margaret's estate. The sheriff showed up at my office, in front of everyone. They're saying I misappropriated funds, that there's an offshore account. This is insane. Someone must have made a mistake. I let the silence stretch for a moment. Then I spoke, my voice calm and cold. No mistake, Thomas. I know about the Cayman Islands account. I know you and Jennifer stole Margaret's inheritance. I know you plan to steal from me and throw me away like garbage. I know everything. The silence on his end was deafening. Mom, I can explain. No, you can't. There's no explanation for what you've done. No justification for betraying your own mother, for stealing from your dying aunt, for running a criminal enterprise with your con artist wife. Yes, I know about Jennifer's real identity too, about her history, about all of it. How did you... I'm Dorothy Cavanaugh, Thomas. I spent 32 years building cases against people exactly like you. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Did you honestly believe you were smarter than me? His voice changed, became harder. The mask was slipping. You recorded us, that security camera. You recorded our private conversation. I documented evidence of crimes being planned in my presence. That's perfectly legal. And that evidence has been shared with the district attorney, the estate attorney, multiple civil lawyers, and 5 other families you've defrauded. Your accounts are frozen. Your assets are being seized. And by this afternoon, you'll be under arrest. You can't do this! His voice rose to a shout. I'm your son. You stopped being my son when you decided to destroy me. You're just a criminal now, and criminals face consequences. I hung up. The phone immediately rang again. I ignored it. Then texts started flooding in. From Thomas, from Jennifer. Threats, pleas, denials, accusations. I read them all calmly, saved them as evidence, and didn't respond. At 10 a.m., Jennifer called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Dorothy, please, she said, her voice dripping with fake tears. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Thomas made some mistakes, yes, but we can fix this. We're family. Think about Emma. Think about what this will do to her. I am thinking about Emma, I replied. I'm thinking about what kind of people are raising her. Criminals, liars, thieves. And I'm thinking about how to protect her from becoming like you. You vindictive bitch, Jennifer hissed, the mask dropping completely. You think you've won? We'll fight this. We have lawyers. We have resources. Had resources, I corrected. Past tense. Your accounts are frozen. Your offshore money is seized. The $2 million you stole from multiple families? That's evidence now. And Jennifer Hartley, or whatever your real name is, your past is catching up with you. Every identity, every scam, every victim. It's all coming out. You'll never see your granddaughter again, she threatened. We'll make sure of that. Actually, my attorney is filing for emergency grandparents' rights based on your criminal activity and flight risk. By the end of the week, Emma will likely be in protective custody. And when you're both convicted, I'll be raising her, teaching her honor, integrity, honesty, everything you couldn't. The string of profanity that followed was creative. I'll give her that. I hung up mid-curse and blocked the number. At 11:30 a.m., Marcus called with an update. Dorothy, you need to see this. Thomas just tried to access the offshore accounts. Obviously, he couldn't. They're frozen. But the attempt was logged. He's panicking, making mistakes. He also just called a very expensive criminal defense attorney. But I'm not sure how he plans to pay them without access to any funds. What about Jennifer? More interesting. She's at home, and according to our surveillance, she's packing. Looks like she's planning to run. Can she? Not anymore. Her passport is flagged. She won't make it through airport security. But the fact that she's trying? That's consciousness of guilt, another piece of evidence. At 1 p.m., I met with Sarah Morrison and 2 prosecutors from the district attorney's office. We sat in a conference room at the courthouse, and I walked them through everything. The security footage, the financial documents, the history of fraud, the coordinated scheme. Mrs. Cavanaugh, the lead prosecutor said, a sharp woman named Amanda Torres. This is one of the most comprehensive cases I've seen. The evidence is overwhelming. We're looking at multiple felony counts. Your son and daughter-in-law are facing serious prison time. Good, I said simply. I need to ask you something, Amanda continued. Are you prepared to testify against your own son? To take the stand and detail everything he did to you? I met her gaze steadily. I'm prepared to tell the truth, whatever that requires. She nodded, satisfied. We'll be executing arrest warrants at 3 p.m. Both Thomas and Jennifer will be taken into custody. Given the flight risk and the severity of the charges, we'll be requesting they be held without bail. Without bail, they would sit in jail, unable to buy their way out, unable to run, unable to hide, just like they had planned to leave me, trapped, helpless, alone. The poetry of it was beautiful. At 2:45 p.m., I drove to Thomas's office. I parked across the street where I could see the entrance. At precisely 3 p.m., 2 police cars pulled up. Officers entered the building. 12 minutes later, they emerged with Thomas in handcuffs. He looked broken, confused, his expensive suit rumpled, his face pale with shock. He scanned the street, and for a moment our eyes met. I saw him recognize my car, saw the disbelief on his face, his mother watching his arrest, his mother who had orchestrated his downfall. I didn't look away, didn't flinch. I wanted him to see me, wanted him to understand that this was real, that this was happening, that his mother had become his worst nightmare. They put him in the patrol car. As it drove away, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pain, just cold certainty that justice was being served. My phone rang. Marcus. Jennifer's in custody. She was literally walking out the door with a suitcase when the police arrived. She tried to fight, actually. They had to restrain her. It's all on body cam footage. When's the arraignment? Tomorrow morning, both of them together. The DA is pushing for immediate trial date given the evidence volume and the flight risk. I drove home slowly, processing everything. In less than 8 hours, I had destroyed the lives of my son and his wife, systematically, legally, completely. The guest house felt different when I walked in. Not like a prison anymore, like a command center. Like the place where Dorothy Cavanaugh had waged war and won. That evening, Emma's caseworker from Child Protective Services called. Mrs. Cavanaugh, given the arrests and the pending charges, we need to place Emma in temporary care. You're listed as the preferred guardian. Are you willing to take custody pending the outcome of the criminal cases? Yes, I said immediately. Absolutely yes. We'll bring her to you within the hour. There will be conditions, supervised visits with the parents if they make bail, regular check-ins with our office. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for whatever it takes to protect my granddaughter. When they brought Emma to me, she was crying, confused, scared. They had told her Mommy and Daddy had to go away for a little while. She didn't understand. How could she? She was just a baby. I held her close, rocking her gently. It's okay, sweetheart. Grandma's here. Grandma will always be here. As she finally fell asleep in my arms, I looked out the window at the main house. Dark now. Empty. Everything they had built on lies and theft was gone. The house would likely be seized as proceeds of criminal activity. The cars, the furniture, the life they had constructed would all be dismantled piece by piece. And I would be here, raising their daughter, teaching her the difference between right and wrong, teaching her that actions have consequences, teaching her that you don't betray the people who love you. My phone buzzed one last time. A news alert. Local attorney and wife arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The story was already breaking. By tomorrow, everyone would know. Thomas's firm, Jennifer's company, their friends, their community. Everyone would know what they had done. Some people might say I went too far, that a mother should forgive. That family comes first. But those people never had their own child plot their destruction. Never watched someone they loved reveal themselves as a monster. Never had to choose between being a victim and being a survivor. I chose survival. I chose justice. I chose to fight back. And I would do it again. Every single time. Tuesday morning arrived cold and gray. I dressed Emma in her favorite yellow dress, the one with small flowers embroidered on the collar. She deserved to look like the innocent child she was, untouched by her parents' crimes. The courthouse was already swarming with reporters when we arrived. News vans, cameras, journalists shouting questions. The story had exploded overnight. Prominent attorney accused of defrauding own mother. Multi-state fraud ring uncovered. Con artist couple targeted elderly victims. I held Emma close, shielding her face as we pushed through to the courthouse entrance. Linda Park met us inside, along with a victim advocate who would watch Emma during the proceedings. "Ready for this?" Linda asked quietly. "More than ready." The courtroom was packed. I recognized faces from my years practicing law. Colleagues, former clients, people who knew me, knew my reputation. They looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and shock. Dorothy Cavanaugh, the woman who never lost, who protected families, whose own family had betrayed her. Thomas and Jennifer were brought in separately, both in orange jumpsuits, both handcuffed. Thomas looked like he hadn't slept. Jennifer's perfectly styled hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared. They looked across the courtroom and saw me sitting in the front row. Jennifer's eyes filled with pure hatred. Thomas just looked broken. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, and the bailiff called the court to order. She was a stern woman in her mid-60s with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen every kind of criminal excuse imaginable. The People versus Thomas Michael Cavanaugh and Jennifer Marie Cavanaugh, also known as Jennifer Hartley, also known as Jennifer Collins, the prosecutor began. "Your Honor, the defendants are charged with multiple felony counts, including wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, identity theft, and theft from an estate." Judge Morrison reviewed the charging documents, her expression growing harder with each page. "These are serious charges," she said finally. "Mr. Cavanaugh, you're an attorney. You understand the gravity of what you're accused of?" Thomas's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client maintains his innocence. These charges are based on a misunderstanding between family members. We request reasonable bail so Mr. Cavanaugh can prepare his defense and maintain his employment." "Employment?" Judge Morrison's eyebrow raised. "I have a letter here from Morrison, Steinberg, and Associates stating that Mr. Cavanaugh has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending the outcome of these proceedings. As for bail, I'm reviewing the prosecution's evidence summary. Multiple offshore accounts, a pattern of fraud spanning several years. Flight risk indicators including recent attempts to access frozen foreign accounts and the defendant, Jennifer Cavanaugh's history of fleeing jurisdiction in previous cases." She turned to Jennifer's attorney. "Counselor, anything to add regarding your client?" Jennifer's lawyer, a young man who looked overwhelmed, stammered. "Your Honor, Mrs. Cavanaugh has strong ties to the community. She's a mother. She requests bail to care for her child. Mrs. Cavanaugh's child is currently in protective custody due to the parents' arrest on serious felony charges," Judge Morrison stated flatly. "Next argument?" The lawyer had no response. "Bail is denied for both defendants," Judge Morrison declared. "Given the flight risk, the severity of the charges, and the pattern of deceptive behavior documented in the evidence, both defendants will remain in custody pending trial. Trial date is set for 90 days from today. Discovery deadlines will be expedited given the volume of evidence." The gavel struck. "Final." Jennifer screamed. Actually screamed in the courtroom. "This is insane! You can't do this! I have rights!" The bailiffs moved toward her, but Judge Morrison held up her hand. "Mrs. Cavanaugh, you have the right to a fair trial. You have the right to an attorney. You have the right to present evidence in your defense. What you don't have is the right to commit fraud, to steal from vulnerable people, to destroy families for profit. Your alleged crimes show a pattern of predatory behavior that makes you a danger to the community. You will remain in custody." As they were led away, Thomas turned back one last time. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I saw him mouth the words, Why, Mom? Why? He had the audacity to ask why. Because you destroyed me, I thought. Because you treated me like garbage. Because you stole from your dying aunt. Because you conspired to leave me destitute and alone. Because you became a monster, and monsters need to be stopped. But I didn't say any of that. I just stared back, my expression neutral, until he turned away. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. Microphones thrust forward, questions shouted from every direction. Mrs. Cavanaugh, how does it feel to see your own son arrested? Did you suspect what was happening? What would you say to other families dealing with elder fraud? Linda stepped forward, her hand raised for silence. Mrs. Cavanaugh will make a brief statement. I looked directly into the cameras. This moment would be broadcast across the state, maybe the nation. Every word mattered. For 32 years, I dedicated my career to protecting families from exactly the kind of predatory behavior my son and daughter-in-law engaged in. When I discovered what they had done, not just to me but to multiple families, I had a choice. I could remain silent, could accept being a victim, could let them continue destroying lives. Or I could fight back. I chose justice, not revenge, justice. And I hope that any person who has been exploited, manipulated, or abused by someone they trusted will see that you don't have to accept it. You have power, you have rights, and you have allies who will fight for you. I paused, letting the words sink in. To Thomas and Jennifer, I would say this: actions have consequences. You chose to become criminals. Now you face criminal consequences. And to anyone else who might consider exploiting elderly family members, who might think their victims are too weak or too trusting to fight back, remember this moment. Remember that sometimes the person you underestimate is the most dangerous opponent you'll ever face. The reporters erupted with follow-up questions, but Linda guided us away, back to the car where Emma waited with the advocate. My phone was ringing constantly. Former colleagues expressing support. Victim advocacy groups requesting interviews. Other families who had experienced similar betrayals reaching out for advice. The case had become something bigger than just my personal story. It had become a symbol. That afternoon, I met with the other victim families at Linda's office: Patricia Chen, Michael Torres, and the others who had been destroyed by Thomas and Jennifer's schemes. We sat around the conference table, no longer just victims, but warriors preparing for battle. The criminal trial will be first, Linda explained. That's the state's case. But we also have our civil suits. Once they're convicted, the civil cases become almost automatic wins. We can pursue full damages, possibly treble damages under elder abuse statutes, and we can ensure that every penny they stole is returned. What about the $2 million in the third offshore account? Patricia asked. Marcus pulled up a spreadsheet on his laptop. I've traced it all. Every deposit, every victim, every theft. When the criminal case concludes, that money will be divided among all the victims proportionally. It won't make anyone whole, but it's something. It's more than something, Michael Torres said quietly. It's acknowledgement. It's validation that what happened to us was real, was wrong, and that there are consequences. We spent the next 3 hours coordinating our civil cases, ensuring that every legal avenue was pursued, every piece of evidence was shared, every opportunity for justice was maximized. As the meeting concluded, Patricia approached me privately. Dorothy, I want you to know something. When we first found out what they did to us, I felt so ashamed, so stupid, like it was my fault for trusting them. But seeing you stand up in that courthouse, seeing you refuse to be a victim, it changed something in me. You gave us permission to be angry, to fight back, to demand justice. Her words hit me harder than I expected. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who had ever been betrayed by someone they loved. Everyone who had been told to forgive and forget. Everyone who had been made to feel like seeking justice was somehow wrong. You were never stupid, I told her firmly. You were trusting. You were kind. You were human. They exploited those qualities. That's on them, not you. She hugged me, and I felt her tears on my shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for showing us that we matter. That evening, I sat with Emma in the guest house, reading her a bedtime story. She asked about her parents, where they were, when they were coming home. How do you explain to a 2-year-old that her parents are in jail? That they're criminals? That everything she knew was built on lies? Mommy and Daddy made some mistakes, I said gently. Big mistakes, and now they have to stay away for a while to think about what they did. But you're safe here with Grandma. I'll always keep you safe. She fell asleep holding my hand, trusting completely. That trust was sacred. I would protect it, nurture it, never betray it the way her parents had betrayed mine. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. You think you've won. You haven't. We have information you don't know about. Information that will destroy you if you don't drop the charges. You have 24 hours to decide. A threat? From who? Thomas had no access to phones in jail. Jennifer either. This was someone else. Someone working for them? Someone they had contacted before their arrest? I forwarded the message to Sarah Morrison immediately. Her response came within minutes. Attempting to intimidate a witness is a crime. We'll trace the number. Don't respond. Don't engage. This is desperation, Dorothy. They're panicking. Good. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them feel what it's like to be powerless, trapped, watching everything crumble around them. I had spent months living in fear without even knowing it. Fear of losing my home, my family, my security. Now that fear was theirs. And unlike them, I had done nothing to deserve it. The war wasn't over. The trial was still months away. There would be more attacks, more threats, more attempts to make me back down. But I was Dorothy Cavanaugh. I had built a career on never backing down. And I wasn't about to start now. The threatening text was traced within hours. It came from a burner phone purchased in Nevada, but the IP address of the account that set it up traced back to someone named Derek Morrison, Jennifer's brother. A brother I didn't even know existed. Sarah Morrison called me Wednesday evening with the news. He has a record: fraud, identity theft, served 2 years in Nevada. He was released 6 months ago. We think he's been helping Jennifer hide assets. Can you bring him in? Already have a warrant out. But Dorothy, this means they have resources we didn't know about. People helping them. We need to be careful. Careful. I had been careful my entire life. Look where it got me. Now it was time to be fearless. Thursday morning, Robert Thorne called with news about the estate case. Judge Morrison is expediting everything. Emergency hearing is today at 2 p.m. She wants Thomas to explain, under oath, what happened to Margaret's inheritance. This was it. The first real confrontation where Thomas would have to answer for his crimes publicly, legally, with no escape. The courtroom was smaller this time, but the atmosphere was electric. Robert sat beside me, his expression grim and determined. Across the room, Thomas's attorney looked uncomfortable. He knew what was coming. Judge Morrison entered, and we all stood. She wasted no time. Mr. Cavanaugh, you're here to answer questions about the disposition of your Aunt Margaret Cavanaugh's estate. You were the sole beneficiary of an inheritance totaling $750,000. The estate attorney, Mr. Thorne, has evidence suggesting these funds were not allocated as you represented. Approach the witness stand. Thomas was brought in wearing his orange jumpsuit, handcuffs removed. He looked terrible. 3 days in jail had stripped away the polished veneer. He was just a frightened man now, facing the consequences of his choices. Mr. Cavanaugh, you're under oath, Judge Morrison reminded him. Where is the money from Margaret Cavanaugh's estate? His attorney stood. Your Honor, my client invokes his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. In a civil proceeding regarding estate funds? Judge Morrison's tone was sharp. You understand that invoking the Fifth in a civil case allows the court to draw adverse inferences? We understand, Your Honor. Very well. Mr. Cavanaugh, did you transfer your aunt's inheritance to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands? I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Did you falsely represent to your mother that these funds would be placed in a trust for your daughter's education? I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Did you conspire with your wife to defraud multiple victims of their life savings? I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Judge Morrison set down her papers with a decisive thud. Your refusal to answer these questions in a civil proceeding speaks volumes, Mr. Cavanaugh. Based on the documentary evidence presented by Mr. Thorne, including bank records, wire transfer receipts, and recorded conversations, I find that you did willfully misappropriate Margaret Cavanaugh's estate. I'm ordering the immediate return of all funds, plus interest and penalties. Additionally, I'm removing you as a beneficiary of any future estate matters and imposing sanctions for fraud upon the court." Thomas's face went white. "Your Honor, please, I can explain." "You had your chance to explain. You chose to hide behind the Fifth Amendment. This matter is concluded. Bailiff, return the defendant to custody." As Thomas was led away, he looked at me one final time, not with the pleading expression from before, but with pure rage. His mask had completely fallen. There was my son's true face, not the loving child I had raised, but the monster he had become. "You're destroying your own family," he shouted as the bailiffs pulled him toward the door. "Your own flesh and blood. What kind of mother are you?" I stood, my voice calm and clear. "The kind who taught you right from wrong. The kind who won't enable criminal behavior, even when it comes from my own son. The kind who protects the innocent, including your daughter, from predators, even when those predators are her own parents." The door slammed shut behind him, cutting off his protests. Robert touched my shoulder gently. "That took courage, Dorothy." "No," I said quietly. "It took necessity." Courage would have been stopping him before it came to this. That evening, Marcus called with an update that changed everything. Derek Morrison made a mistake, a big one. He tried to access one of the offshore accounts using Jennifer's login credentials. Federal authorities tracked him to a motel in Reno. They're moving in now. What does this mean? It means we might find out about hidden assets. If Derek was helping them, he knows where all the bodies are buried, so to speak. And he's looking at serious federal charges. He might flip, might testify against Thomas and Jennifer in exchange for a deal. An hour later, Sarah Morrison called. "We have Derek in custody. And Dorothy, he's talking. He wants a deal, and he's offering up everything. Names, dates, account numbers, other victims we didn't even know about. This is bigger than we thought." "How much bigger?" "Try $4 million bigger. Multiple schemes running simultaneously. Properties purchased under shell companies. Investments hidden in fake trusts. Thomas and Jennifer weren't just opportunistic criminals. They were running a sophisticated operation. $4 million. The number staggered me. This wasn't just about stealing from family. This was organized crime. "There's more," Sarah continued. "Derek says Thomas was planning something else, something they were going to do after they pushed you out. They were going to fake your death." My blood ran cold. "What?" "Make it look like an accident. Car crash. Fall downstairs. Something plausible. Then they would inherit whatever remained of your assets, collect life insurance if you had any, and most importantly, eliminate any possibility of you discovering their crimes. Derek says it was Jennifer's idea, but Thomas agreed. They were planning it for next month." I sat down slowly, my legs suddenly weak. "They weren't just going to rob me. They were going to kill me." "Derek has text messages discussing it," Sarah said. "Encrypted, but he kept copies. He was smart enough to realize he needed insurance against his sister. Those messages are evidence of conspiracy to commit murder." "When were you going to tell me this?" "I'm telling you now. Dorothy, this changes the charges. We're adding attempted murder conspiracy. That's life in prison. No parole, no second chances." I closed my eyes, processing it. My son had planned to kill me, had discussed it casually with his wife and her brother, had set a timeline for my murder. The betrayal went deeper than I had ever imagined. "Mrs. Cavanaugh?" Sarah's voice was gentle. "Are you okay?" "No," I said honestly. "But I will be. Especially knowing they'll spend the rest of their lives in prison." Friday brought the news to the media. Murder plot uncovered in elder fraud case. The story exploded. National news picked it up. Cable networks ran segments. My face was everywhere. The mother who had stopped her own son from killing her. The phone calls became overwhelming. Interview requests, book deals, movie offers. Everyone wanted the story of Dorothy Cavanaugh, the attorney who dismantled her son's criminal empire and saved her own life. I declined them all. This wasn't entertainment. This was tragedy. My family was destroyed. My son was a murderer. My granddaughter would grow up knowing her parents had planned to kill her grandmother. But I had survived. More than survived. I had fought back and won. Saturday morning, I took Emma to the park again. The same park where I had brought her before everything exploded. She played on the swings, laughed at the dogs, chased butterflies. Innocent. pure, untouched by the darkness her parents had created. A woman approached me, hesitant. "Mrs. Cavanaugh? I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to say thank you. My mother was defrauded by her caregiver last year. We felt so helpless, but seeing what you did, how you fought back, it gave us courage to pursue charges. We just got a conviction last week." I felt tears prick my eyes. "I'm glad you got justice." "It's more than justice. It's hope. Hope that we don't have to accept abuse just because it comes from someone we're supposed to trust. You showed us that." After she left, I sat on the bench watching Emma play. Other parents watched me, some with sympathy, some with curiosity, some with fear. I had become a cautionary tale, the mother whose son tried to destroy her, the woman who refused to be destroyed. My phone buzzed, a text from Linda Park. "DA is offering Thomas and Jennifer a plea deal, 25 years each. They want your input before presenting it." 25 years? They would be in their 70s before they were released. They would miss Emma's entire childhood, every milestone, every achievement, every moment. The vindictive part of me wanted to say no, wanted to take them to trial, parade every crime before a jury, watch them be convicted and sentenced to life. But the practical part of me, the attorney who had seen how trials could go wrong, how juries could be unpredictable, knew that a guaranteed 25 years was better than risking acquittal. I texted back, "Accept the plea, but I want to make a victim impact statement before sentencing." Linda responded immediately, "Absolutely. You've earned that right. Victim impact statement. My chance to look Thomas and Jennifer in the eye and tell them exactly what they had done to me, to our family, to Emma, to every person they had destroyed. I would make sure they understood. Make sure they knew that their actions had consequences that would echo for decades. Make sure they spent every day of their 25 years in prison thinking about the mother they had tried to murder." Emma ran up to me, her face flushed with happiness. "Grandma, push me on the swings." I lifted her into the swing, pushing gently, listening to her laugh. This was what they had tried to take from me. This joy, this love, this precious relationship with my granddaughter. They had failed. I was still here, still fighting, still loving, still strong. And they were behind bars where they belonged. The courtroom was packed for sentencing day. Media filled the back rows, sketch artists positioned strategically, every seat occupied by someone whose life had been touched by Thomas and Jennifer's crimes. The other victim families sat together, a united front. Patricia Chen held my hand as we waited. Judge Morrison entered, and silence fell like a curtain. Thomas and Jennifer were brought in separately. Both had accepted the plea deal, 25 years each for wire fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Their lawyers had advised them it was the best they could hope for given the mountain of evidence. They looked different. Prison had aged them. Thomas's hair was graying at the temples. Jennifer's face was drawn, makeup-free, the beautiful facade cracked and crumbling. "Before I accept these plea agreements and impose sentence," Judge Morrison said, "the victims have the right to be heard. Mrs. Dorothy Cavanaugh, would you like to make a statement?" I stood, my hands steady, my voice clear. "Your Honor, members of the court, I stand before you not just as a victim, but as a mother who failed to see the monster her son had become. For 58 years, I believed in family. I believed that love and sacrifice would be returned with loyalty and gratitude. I was wrong. I looked directly at Thomas. He couldn't meet my eyes. Thomas, I gave you everything. My time, my money, my unconditional love. I put you through school, supported your dreams, celebrated your successes. And you repaid me by plotting my murder. You didn't just steal my money. You stole my trust, my sense of safety, my belief in the goodness of family." Jennifer stared at the floor, her jaw clenched. "To Jennifer, if that's even your real name, you are a predator who has destroyed countless families. You found the perfect accomplice in my son, and together you created suffering that will echo for generations. Emma will grow up knowing her parents valued money more than love, theft more than honor, murder more than family." My voice didn't waver. I had practiced this, refined it, made sure every word counted. I'm not asking for mercy for them. They showed no mercy to their victims. They plan no mercy for me. I'm asking that this sentence serve as a warning to every person who considers exploiting the elderly, who thinks that kindness is weakness, who believes that love can be weaponized without consequence. I turned back to the judge. 25 years isn't enough to undo the damage they've caused, but it's enough to ensure they can't hurt anyone else. And it's enough for Emma to grow up safe from their influence. The courtroom was silent as I sat down. Patricia squeezed my hand. Other victims nodded, tears streaming down their faces. Judge Morrison's expression was granite. Mr. Cavanaugh, Mrs. Cavanaugh, you have pled guilty to crimes that represent the worst kind of betrayal. You exploited trust, targeted the vulnerable, and planned murder to cover your tracks. Your actions weren't mistakes. They were choices, calculated, deliberate, evil choices. She paused, letting the words sink in. I hereby sentence each of you to 25 years in federal prison, to be served without possibility of parole. All assets will be liquidated to provide restitution to your victims. You are both prohibited from any contact with Emma Cavanaugh or any of your victims for life. May you spend every day of your incarceration contemplating the lives you destroyed. The gavel struck. Final, absolute justice. As they were led away, Thomas looked back one last time. Not at me. At Emma, who sat with a caseworker in the back of the courtroom. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but the bailiff pulled him forward. Jennifer never looked back at all. Outside, reporters swarmed, but I had nothing more to say. The statement I needed to make had been made in court, under oath, where it mattered. That evening, I sat in the guest house, now legally mine, as part of the restitution settlement. The main house would be sold, the proceeds divided among the victims. I would keep the guest house and Emma. It was more than enough. My phone rang. Marcus Chen. It's over, Dorothy. Every account recovered, every victim compensated, every legal loose end tied up. You did it. We did it, I corrected. All of us together. What's next for you? I looked at Emma sleeping peacefully in her crib, her small chest rising and falling with innocent breath. I'm going to raise my granddaughter. Teach her about justice, about standing up for yourself, about being strong. And maybe, just maybe, I'll help other families avoid what happened to us. You'd go back to law? Not practicing. Advocacy, education, making sure people know the warning signs of financial abuse, making sure no one else has to fight this battle alone. After we hung up, I walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. Stars visible despite the city lights. Bright, constant, enduring. I had survived the worst betrayal imaginable. I had fought back against my own son. I had protected not just myself, but an entire community of victims. And I had won, not just in court, not just financially, but morally, ethically, completely. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of rebuilding, of creating a new life for Emma and myself, of turning this tragedy into purpose. But tonight, I allowed myself to simply breathe, to feel the weight lift, to know that justice, real justice, had been served. 25 years. They would have a long time to think about what they had done, and I would have a lifetime to make sure Emma knew she was loved, protected, and worthy of a family that would never betray her. The nightmare was over. The healing could begin. 6 months later, I stood in front of a conference room filled with attorneys, social workers, and victim advocates. The sign on the door read, Cavanaugh Foundation for Elder Justice, First Annual Training Seminar. Emma played quietly in the corner with toys, watched by a caregiver. She was thriving. Therapy was helping her process the trauma. She called me Grandma and knew that Mommy and Daddy had made bad choices and couldn't come home. Simple truth, appropriate for her age. Financial elder abuse is one of the fastest-growing crimes in America, I told the room. And it's often perpetrated by those closest to the victims, family members, trusted caregivers, people who exploit love and turn it into a weapon. I clicked to the next slide, showing statistics. Billions stolen annually. Millions of victims. Most cases never reported because of shame, confusion, or misplaced loyalty. I know this personally, I continued. My own son and daughter-in-law defrauded me and planned my murder. But I also know that victims have power. They have resources. They have the law on their side if they're brave enough to use it. After the presentation, people approached with their own stories. Some were victims seeking guidance, others were attorneys wanting to help. A few were family members who suspected abuse but didn't know how to intervene. To each one, I offered the same message: you are not alone, you are not powerless, and you deserve justice. That evening, I received an email from Patricia Chen. She had started her own support group for families affected by financial fraud. Michael Torres had successfully sued his mother's former caregiver and won a settlement. The ripple effect of our case was spreading, empowering others to fight back. Linda Park had taken on 3 new elder abuse cases, all referrals from families who had heard about our victory. Sarah Morrison was training other detectives on how to investigate financial crimes against the elderly. Robert Thorne had established a trust specifically for victims of family fraud. We had turned our tragedy into a movement. My phone rang. It was the prison. Thomas was requesting a supervised call, his first attempt to contact me in 6 months. I hesitated, then accepted. "Mom?" His voice was hollow, broken. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know. I was quiet for a long moment. "Thomas, I appreciate the apology. But sorry doesn't undo the trauma. It doesn't restore the trust. It doesn't give back the years you stole from Emma. I know. I think about it every day. About what I became. About what I lost. Then use that time to become someone different. Someone who deserves redemption, even if you never receive it. That's all you can do now. Will you ever forgive me?" I looked at Emma, drawing pictures at the kitchen table. Happy. Safe. Loved. "I don't know, Thomas. Right now, I'm focused on moving forward, not looking back. Maybe someday, but not today." I hung up before he could respond. Forgiveness was a gift I might never be able to give, and that was okay. I had learned that being strong didn't mean being forgiving. It meant setting boundaries, protecting yourself, and refusing to let others define your worth. That weekend, the guest house officially became my permanent home. I had renovated it, transformed it from a prison to a sanctuary. Emma had her own room, painted sunshine yellow with clouds on the ceiling. My office was filled with case files from the foundation, resources for victims, plans for expansion. The main house had sold, the proceeds distributed to all the victims. Everyone received restitution, some receiving more than they had lost due to the penalties and recovered hidden assets. Justice wasn't just served, it was delivered with interest. As I tucked Emma into bed that night, she looked up at me with those innocent eyes. "Grandma, my teacher says you're a hero. Are you?" I smiled, brushing hair from her forehead. "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who refused to stay down when life knocked me over. That's not being a hero. That's being human. Will you teach me to be like that?" "Every single day," I promised. "I'll teach you to be strong, to be brave, to stand up for yourself and others. I'll teach you that family isn't just blood. It's loyalty, honesty, and love. Real love, not the fake kind that comes with conditions." She yawned, already drifting off. "I love you, Grandma. I love you too, little one. More than you'll ever know." I turned off the light and walked to my office. On the wall hung a frame with a quote I had chosen carefully. "The measure of who we are is what we do with what we have." Thomas and Jennifer had everything: love, opportunity, resources, and they chose to destroy. I had been left with nothing but pain and betrayal, and I chose to build. That was the difference. That was the lesson. That was the legacy I would leave for Emma. Not the story of how her parents tried to destroy me, but the story of how I refused to be destroyed, how I fought back with intelligence, strategy, and the law, how I turned victimhood into advocacy, how I transformed personal tragedy into public good. My phone buzzed with a notification. Another family reaching out for help, another victim finding the courage to fight back, another opportunity to make a difference. I smiled and began typing my response. The war was over. I had won. But the mission? The mission was just beginning. And Dorothy Cavanaugh always finishes what she starts.